Alrighty, let's get this review off and running since I have to start this review 30 minutes after the final game of the Sunday night action around MLS is finished because I have to write down both of these games on the board. But let's talk about the first game of the Sunday action, which was Sporting KC versus Minnesota United. And look, this was bound to happen. This was bound to happen with the way that the Loons were coming into this game very shorthanded and had a lot of their key players currently on IR. And knowing the fact that when I saw the lineup that Adrian Heath decided to put for this game, yeah, it is pretty clear that he was not only putting a B team in this game, but he was putting a lineup that basically say that we're probably going to lose this game. And unless if we somehow in some way is going to get a 0-0 draw out of this one, we most likely is going to drop all 3 points. And at least for the first 80 minutes, it looked like that was going to happen. And the resiliency of this defense, I thought was going to get the result that I think Adrian Heath was looking for coming into this game. But you can see straight off the bat, SKC was pretty much dominating the entire game, and they almost had a chance to score the opening goal when Johnny Russell just puts a shot wide from 5 yards out. But again, after that, they literally just took complete control of this game as the Loons was just literally sitting in a deep shell, and that, in fact, I think it took until around the 70th minute mark until we actually was registered our third shot of the game, and that for a very long time we were stuck with just 2 shots and no shot on goal on the stat sheet. Now, despite the fact that SKC was in complete control of this game, they just couldn't finish in this game. And this has kind of been the story for the past couple of games for SKC, where it seemed like they always tends to be when they are in complete control of the game and have chances to score the goals. Yeah, they don't do it because they just don't have that finishing product. Although Sinclair did have to deny Shelton after he basically had to aggressively came off his lines, and I thought that was kind of a little bit unorthodox of Dane Sinclair decided to come off his lines, but at the same time it kind of worked out that he basically cut that angle off of Kyrie Shelton and made a good save out of that as we head to halftime at 0-0 in this game. Now in the second half, Gadi Kinda had a chance to finish a chance that all started from a lightning counterattack that SKC was putting in, but unfortunately he wasn't able to do. Then in the 65th minute, Russell looked like he finally got SKC the opening goal that they've been looking for throughout the whole game, only for Debasi with some heroic last line of defense to be clearing that ball just off the line, and this game remains at 0-0. And as the game continues, you can definitely see that the SKC players were getting very frustrated, the fact that they just seem like they can't buy a goal with the effort that they were putting in going forward. But finally, they were able to buy a goal, and it came in the 80th minute when Johnny Russell scored from Graham Susie. Now, there was definitely a question whether or not if this was an offside call, and I look at the replay of this a couple of times, and I gotta say, it definitely looked like Russell was kind of in an offside position. And I guess maybe the reason why they didn't say he was in an offside position is because the camera angle wasn't really good in terms of judging by the fact that whether or not if it was an offside or not, and that since if you don't have a good camera angle to look at it, then it's going to be very hard for VAR to overturn that. But the goal, of course, stands, and as soon as I saw that goal went in for SKC, I knew this game was over. Like, I don't think the Loons was going to come back into this one, and despite the fact that they tried their best for the last 10 minutes of this game to come back into it, they weren't able to do so, as Minnesota would lose this one 1-0 against SKC. And the shots in this game, 21 shots compared to 6 that Minnesota has, 7 shots on goal compared to none that Minnesota has, 9 shots off target compared to 4 that the Loons had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Loons had, and possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession. And again, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be disappointed with this result because I knew coming into this game, knowing the fact that not only we have not ever register a single point against SKC on the road, but just going with a very weak lineup and had to rest some of our guys for a game that is going to be happening next week against Houston, and that since we just have so many injuries to deal with, and it eventually kind of caught up to us. Well, it finally caught up to us in this game, and that thing for the Loons, they just got to move on into the next game against Houston, which again, at least the good news about the next game is that one is not going to happen until Saturday, and that Minnesota will at least have a whole week and a much needed rest to trying to recover after this brutal run that they've been in with like a game pretty much almost every 3 days. And as for SKC, this was definitely a much needed win, and I think that goal that Johnny Russell scored for SKC must have relieved a ton of SKC fans, because if this game ended in a 0-0 draw, you can definitely sense that a lot of SKC fans is going to be very frustrated with this result, and that this was also kind of a game that they need to win, judging by the fact that they need to finally end this miserable run that they've been going through for the past couple of games, and they were playing a very weak Minnesota team coming into this one. But moving on, in terms of the next match, for the second game in a row, Vancouver was involved in a crazy game, but unfortunately this time they came out the wrong result of a crazy game between them and the Montreal Impact. But they scored a goal very early in this game, and it came in the 7th minute when Theo Bair was able to score from Milinkovic, and this was a classic Whitecaps counterattack. Like, I thought for the first half, the Whitecaps was very devastated on the counterattack, and the Impact just kind of had no answer in terms to deal with this. But 7 minutes into this game, the Whitecaps grabbed a 1-0 lead, and they could have grabbed a 2-0 lead just 7 minutes later when Diop had to rob Milinkovic a chance to make it 2-0 after there was a bad giveaway from Wanyama. And that missed chance would come back to haunt the Whitecaps, because literally 1 minute later, Okwanko would score from Safir Taidir after previously Kyoto hits the post, and then as that ball bounced off the post, it goes right into Taidir, who show a great composure in the box to feed it into Okwanko, who just basically tapped it in for the easiest goal that he'll ever score to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Now, in the 29th minute, whoops, so I drop the pen here. In the 29th minute, Diop robbed Cavallini a chance to give the Whitecaps the lead back, and I'm not quite sure that Cavallini meant to do this with a looping header, but Diop was definitely scrambling back to his line, and he was just able to have an outstretched arm to tip that one away and put this game still at 1-1 apiece. Now, in the 39th minute, it looked like Montreal had their second goal, but just like in the last game where they had a couple of times a goal that was disallowed for offside, this was once again the case, as Taidir goal was wiped off because it was offside. But the good news for Taidir is that he eventually would get his goal in the 45th minute, and it comes into the penalty spot. And as much as Thomas Hassel for the past couple of games has been solid for the Whitecaps, yeah, tonight was not one of his better night, and this penalty that he given was definitely not one of his brightest moments, because he came off his lines way too early there. And if you're gonna come off of your line, if you're the goalkeeper to try to win that 50-50 ball, you better win that 50-50 ball, because if you don't win that 50-50 ball, as what Hassel did in this incident, then you're most likely going to take out the attacker, which will result in a penalty, which Taidir was able to put away to give Montreal the lead heading into the second half. Now, in the second half, they would make it 3-1 as Piet scores his first ever MLS career goal from Taidir and Okwanko. So Samuel Piet joined a long list of players during this week action around MLS that got their first ever MLS career goal. And things got from bad to worse for Vancouver, as Cavallini would get his second yellow card after it looks like as he was trying to go for the ball and that Diop was able to get to there first. Cavallini just kind of stick his legs out and caught he kind of caught Diop during that instant, and because of that was a second yellow. He of course was sent off, and I'm not quite sure if this was just kind of frustration from Cavallini, but after he, of course, got sent off, he definitely had some few words to say to some of the Impact player, and that kind of resort in a little bit of a scrimmage. Yeah, that's got to be embarrassing if you're Lucas Cavallini. And something tells me Disco is going to see this, and they might either decided to put a hefty fine to Cavallini for failure to leave the pitch, or might suspend him an additional game because of instigating that scuffle that he clearly didn't need to do in that play. Then, 4 minutes later, it would be 4-1 in favor of Montreal when Kyoto was able to score from Piet and Broguiat. So Samuel Piet, what a day he had, not only scoring his first ever MLS career goal, but also on the helpers chart here in this goal to make it 4-1 in favor of the Impact. And at that point, I thought, yep, that is pretty much game, set, and match. And this is just really to a point where it's not just if Montreal is going to win, but how many more goals is Montreal is going to put against Vancouver. And are we going to see something similar to what we saw on Thursday when Seattle put 7 past the Quakes, and that this is going to be end up with a 7-1 result? But instead, Vancouver, after the fourth goal that they concede, they definitely has some good chance to get the second goal, and that you can definitely see that they definitely didn't believe that they were down and out. And in fact, they actually got a goal back in the 66th minute, albeit Camacho did score the own goal, but this was just one of those own goal when the ball was delivered into the box perfectly. And when you're a defender in that no man's land area, when the ball is delivered in a perfect area in the box, yeah, it's going to be very tough to try to clear that one away. And unfortunately, Camacho, who's trying to clear that perfect ball into the box, cleared it right into his own net. And just like that, Vancouver had maybe a glimmers of hope that they could come back into this game. Then their glimmers of hope look like have started to become a wide open door of hope, as Martial would be getting a straight red card after a bad tackle that he put on Dahomey, and they actually went to VAR to check whether or not if that was worthy of a red card, as originally it was a yellow card that was given to Martial. When they checked it, it was deemed a red card. So fortunately for Martial, he basically had the reverse fortune in that compared to that last game against, or a couple of games ago against TFC, where a couple of games ago he looked like he was going to be sent off, but VAR basically changed his red card to just a yellow. And in this game, it's a different story. It's the opposite of that. So with 10v10 soccer, again, Vancouver, who, as I said, they had a slimmer of hope, looked like now their hope is even wide open, and they were really pushing for that third goal, and they thought that they got that third goal, but Broguiat with a heroic defending to clear the ball off the line from Talbot's shot. And despite the fact that Whitecaps continued to push for the third goal, they weren't able to get it. And in the end, the Impact is able to win 4-2 in this game. And the shots in this game, 18 shots compared to 13 that Vancouver has. 7 shots on goal compared to 6 that Vancouver has. 5 shots off target compared to 6 that Vancouver has. 6 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that Vancouver has. And possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that the Whitecaps had. Definitely, when you look at the stats sheet, both of these teams definitely had more shots and more shots on goal that they had compared to the last couple of games. But in the end, it was Montreal, the one that was just a little bit more clinical. And despite the fact that I thought this was probably the best performance for the Whitecaps on the attacking end, they just unfortunately unable to do what they did last time against TFC and somehow pull off a miraculous win against the Impact in this game. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is another 4-2 result, but this time it goes in favor of the home side, as LAFC got a much needed win against a Portland Timbers side that, the Portland Timbers, they're pretty much almost in the same situation that Minnesota is in right now, as they just found out that one of their star player, Blanco, is going to be out for the season with a torn ACL. But also coming into this game, they didn't have Mabiela and Diego Chara because they were on the IR list. So this was definitely a very short-handed Timbers team, and those injuries definitely show why their defense was definitely not as good as we saw in that game against the Seattle Sounders. And that this LAFC attack, who has just struggled for the past couple of games, look like they're back at their best after this one. Now, in the first half, despite the fact that this ended up to be a crazy game, it was actually very disjointed for the first 20 minutes of this game, in that we didn't have our first shot until the 18th minute into this one. But by the time when we finished the first 20 minutes of this game, this is when the fireworks basically happen in the first half. First of all, you got Williamson that gets the opening goal of this game from Mora and Valeri to give the Timbers a 1-0 lead. Then Steve Clark had to make an incredible save to rob Janela, but as he basically put that rebound right to Rossi, that was able to tap it in to what looked like was the equalizer for LAFC. The linesman on the far side raised his flag, and that goal was disallowed because of offside, and it was very close. I mean, Rossi was just an inch offside, but nevertheless, he was in an offside position, and that goal, of course, was disallowed. But the good news for LAFC is that eventually they did get the equalizer, and it came 2 minutes later when Mark-Anthony Kaye scored from Bradley Wright-Phillips and Brian Rodriguez, before Rossi would make it 2-1 in favor of LAFC from Cifuentes, and Bradley Wright-Phillips, right on the stroke of halftime, would score from Janela, as LAFC, 3 quick goals in a span of 10 minutes. All of a sudden, were up 3-1 right as we were head to halftime, and it looked like they had all the momentum heading into halftime until Ebobisse scored, or literally about 60 seconds after BWP made it 3-1 in favor of LAFC from Villafania, and that pendulum of momentum just quickly swing right back to the Portland Timbers as we head into the halftime whistle. Now, in the second half, we continue to see some crazy action, and we saw the Timbers had a couple of big opportunity to equalize. Segura had to make a goal line clearance as the Parrish was looking to try to head that one into the back of the net. Technically, I think he was trying to head that one back into the box, but you know, if no one was able to get to it, that one was going to end up into the back of the net, and it's a great heads-up play for Segura to able to clear that one off the line. Then Valeri had a chance to hit a spectacular free kick for about 21 yards out, only for the post to deny him, before Sesiaga would deny Valeri, and you just kind of had a feeling that the Timbers were getting closer to get that equalizer, and at that point, LAFC realized that they got to get this 4th goal, and that, you know, it started to kind of become a little bit of an open game, which that definitely favored LAFC, considered they always love to play a game that is very open, and that the game, of course, become end-to-end. But right as we head to stoppage time in this game, Niezgoda was actually brought down in the box, but there was no penalty that was given. And this actually ends up to be a bit of a crazy sequence, because before that, Steve Clark literally came off his lines, and that he basically made a face save on Rossi, and then as he made that save, he basically pumped the ball right up to Niezgoda, and we thought we were going to see probably one of the craziest sequence that ends up to be a goal. But Niezgoda was brought down in the box from Jakovic. There was definitely a lot of shout from the Timbers bench that should have been a penalty. But when you look on the replay, it looked like Jakovic was able to just get enough of the ball that the referee says that it was not a penalty given to the Portland Timbers. And as the Timbers continue to push to try to get that 3rd goal, LAFC would eventually shut the door in the 95th minute, and really the last kick of the game, when Masutsky was able to score from Mark-Anthony Kaye to make it 4-2 in favor of LAFC, and that would be the final score in this frantic game between both of these teams. As the shots in this game, 14 shots compared to the 10 that the Timbers had, 6 shots on goal compared to the 5 that the Timbers had, 5 shots off target compared to the 4 that the Timbers had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to the 1 that the Timbers had, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession. And although at time LAFC, their defense were not as good, or their defense looked just as bad as they have been in the last couple of games, they did make some big save they did just enough, and also Sesiaga made a couple of big saves to just limit the amount of goals that the Portland Timbers score, while LAFC, again, their attack definitely looked much better in this game compared to the last two, although a lot of that may be due to the fact that the Timbers were very short-handed in the defensive end, and that the Timbers have been having issue in terms of defending ever since the MLS's back tournament is over. And as speaking of which, as for the Timbers, they're just gonna have to move on from this resort, and that you can clearly see that they desperately miss Blanco in terms of the fact that I think in certain part of this game, when the game kind of become a little bit end to end, they would have just had some magical moment either from Valerio or from the injured Blanco. They probably could have tied this game up, but hopefully in the next game, they of course will get some of their defensive reinforcement back, because they clearly need it if they want to get back into winning ways. Now, that being said, moving on into the last game of tonight's action. And you know what? I'm going to say this is a positive result for the Quakes. As much as I know they had chances to win this game, and some will say that they probably could have won this game because they were kind of the better team over a certain period of this game. I'm just kind of glad the fact that the Quakes were able to get a rare clean sheet in this one. And if you just kind of ignore that clean sheet that we got against the Seattle Sounders in the first game of the MLS's back tournament, it's been a very long time since the Quakes were able to get a clean sheet. Like, the last time they got a clean sheet was against Orlando City all the way back last year in August. And judging by the fact that the team just conceded 7 goals just a couple of nights ago, you would be drunk to think that the Quakes would be able to shut down a Galaxy attack that has been red hot coming into this game, and yet somehow in some way they were able to contain, and that the defense was so much better in this one compared to whatever of a defensive reinforcement that they put in that game against the Seattle Sounders. And what's even more surprising is the fact that this back line that played in this game against the Galaxy is pretty much almost the same back line as the one that gave up 7 goals against the Sounders, which kind of just make me a little bit more remarkable, the fact that they were able to bounce back this quickly to get a clean sheet in this one. Now, in the 18th minute of this game, Bingham was able to deny Kasia a chance to score the opening goal after there was a scramble in the box. Kasia is the only defensive player that didn't participate in the seven goal tragedy that the Quakes were in. Although, Kasia coming back into the back line doesn't really make me feel any better. The fact that this defense was going to be more stable. In fact, I thought it was going to be even more instability in terms of this defense, because I've seen many times when Kasia is there at the back and he just makes some silly mistake, as I've seen over this season. Now, Jackson Yu did have a chance to get the opening goal, and probably should have got the opening goal in this when he was wide open from 6 yards out. And although Bingham didn't make a good save out of that is one that I think Jackson Yu would love to have back, and that one you probably think he should have put it into the back of net to give the Quakes a 1-0 lead. Then Efrain Alvarez had a chance to get the opening goal for the Galaxy, and probably this is the closest anybody has come to getting a goal when he rattled a shot off the post. But as we head to the second half 0-0 in this game, I just have a feeling that, I know that the Quakes did much better in terms of defensive wise for the first 45 minutes, but I doubt they're going to do the same thing in the second half, and that we desperately need to get our attack going, because for majority of this game, the attack just did not get going whatsoever. But in the second half, the Quakes did kind of come out in the second half with some decent half chances, but they weren't able to put away. Then the Galaxy decided to bring in their cavalry and decided to bring Jonathan Dos Santos and Chicharito, and this is when I really felt like we need to score soon, or else that they're going to eventually get the opening goal. And it looked like they did get the opening goal in the 74th minute when Sebastian Lletget, who has just been in form in the past couple of games, was absolutely robbed by Daniel Vega. And as much as that was a great save from Vega, that also means that he's probably going to make a bad mistake late in this game, isn't he? I mean, for every incredible save that Daniel Vega made for the Quakes, he's going to make one kind of brain dead kind of moment that would cost the Quakes in this game. But instead, in the 88th minute, it looked like the Quakes might have just stole one in this game when, of all people, Rios looked like he basically scored the winner for the Quakes, but unfortunately it was disallowed for offside, and on the replay, it was the correct call. He was just a hair offside, and that I felt like that was just too good to be true, knowing the fact that I always call Rios the lamppost for a reason, because he basically is completely useless up front, and somehow in some way he basically proved me completely wrong by scoring a goal, but looks like the offside basically prevented him to completely prove me wrong, that he was completely useless going as a number 9 on this team. But either way, that was really the last chance of the game, despite the fact that the Quakes was pushing forward, and that in the end it did end in a 0-0 draw, as the shots in this game, 11 shots compared to 7 that the Quakes had, 2 shots on goal for their team, 5 shots off target compared to 7 that the Galaxy had, 2 shots that was blocked compared to none that the Quakes had, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession. And as much as I know I'm happy with this result, with the way that the Quakes had a great response after just suffer the worst loss in franchise history against the Seattle Sounders. That being said, in the next game, they need to be better in terms of the attack. I mean, not only the final third in this game for the attack was ridiculously poor, but I thought there was just so many times I had to be shouting on my TV by saying that all you had to do is feed the ball to one of our attacker, and the fact that they decide not to do it and decide to just kind of play some sideways passing and backwards kind of passing to slow up the attack, just really infuriating me, and just kind of infuriated me just as much as when we conceded 7 goals against the Seattle Sounders. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my review of today's action. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these 4 games? And as always, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.